Hi, this is Rideshare Dashboard here, and the point of this video is to go through the two major different ways to do passenger referrals, whether it's on Lyft, on Uber, or on Sidecar. You can give out cards in order to earn extra money in terms of passenger referrals. Depending on which service, they'll either credit you $5 in cash or $10 in ride credit. I think Uber's is a little bit higher at maybe about $20 for a ride credit for every new passenger you get on the service. So it all varies depending on which service it is, but for the most part, you can either earn credits or on cash. Depending on how often you take these services, one may work better than the other. So the two major ways of passenger referrals are either passively handing out cards or actively handing out cards. So those are the two major differences. So Harry over at the Rideshare Guy, he had a podcast. I think that was episode 3 or 4. I can't remember now. But he goes through the ins and outs of passenger referrals. He tried a number of different ways to do passenger referrals, and he goes to really big detail about the different ways he does that, both passively and actively. Um, Definitely, actively works significantly better than passively in terms of actual redemption rates. So I was in a Lyft meeting in Boston a couple of weeks ago, and I believe we were just talking about passenger referrals. I think they had just concluded a meeting about street teaming and different strategies that they were using. But they were kind enough to tell us what the conversion rates are generally. So they said that for any given driver, 1% redemption rate is really, really good. So that means that the person or a potential passenger has entered in your code and then has taken a ride. That's the kind of numbers that they have. I'm not exactly sure how they know that. It could be just word of mouth that a lot of drivers are telling them, but generally 1% is very, very good, and 2% is like the top, 1% of any drivers. Um, and I was lucky enough to be able to speak with a number of drivers in Boston. About their referral strategies and how to hand out cards and different ways to do that. There were drivers who do pretty much both. I know of one or two drivers who only do it passively, and they always remark about how Henry Chen has been like number one in passenger referrals. I think he may have dropped down to number two in the country ever since of all time. So there's another good friend of mine, and he does it passively though, and he has no idea how Henry gets his really high redemption rates. He has some pretty spectacular rates. I mean, they're definitely in the 2 or if not even 4% sometimes redemption rates in terms of cards. So that's huge. I mean, for every 100 cards he's handing out, he is getting 4 or maybe sometimes even 5 passenger referrals. That's like $25 right there. And a good buddy of mine, he does it passively. So he pretty much hands out. He just pretty much leaves stacks of cards in places or leaves them in certain spots. Harry from Rideshare Guy, he goes through a couple of those things. He noted putting it into his own residential building. And I came up with a couple others. You can give it to your coworkers or your workplace if you work in like a Fortune 500 company or a large office building. You could try to sweet talk the receptionist or whoever's in your lobby and just say, hey, can you leave these cards here? That may work. You could try to leave some at dentist offices or waiting areas, maybe even hospital waiting areas. You can also try it at like hotel lobbies. There's usually a case or a shelf that has free promotional flyers for cruises and trips and rental cars. So you could try to leave cards there. Usually some businesses have cards that they can give out. You can try to leave some there. Hopefully, you can get the permission of the hotel or or motel, or whatever hotel that you're going to be trying this at. Hopefully you get their permission to just leave your cards there. And then also bulletin boards. I know a lot of people have really good luck with college bulletin boards. If you could try to get into a dorm, that's even better. But I know that that's the reason why Lyft and eventually Uber started hiring college kids to help them promote. They would leave them in like dorm areas and study areas and things like that. And in those areas tend to have obviously significantly less competition. And also students are able to leave up just about anything short of selling sex and guns and things like that. So, and obviously, college kids are poor, and they always love to get a free $5 or $10 or whatever the promotion is. They're much more likely to take it. Um, so bulletin boards also work too. You could generally find some at some restaurants, cafes, coffee shops, things like that, and you could put them up there. And I've seen some decent redemption rates at coffee shops, especially early in the morning. I've done a few of these. Generally, dentist offices are not, they don't do very well, but hospital waiting areas for some reason do. My wife's a doctor, so I end up spending quite a bit of time waiting for her to come out of the hospital and whatnot. So I usually take the 2 minutes, and I'll usually leave them in certain places in the waiting area, and that does have um, that does pay off a little bit. But generally, these passive strategies, they don't nearly work as well as active strategies. These passive ones, I think that our Lyft team also noted this, that they're closer to like the 0.5% redemption rate. But active ones tend to do a little bit better. I've spoken to a few people, and they say their redemption rates are definitely above 1 or 2%. But that's a good benchmark to hit, though. 1% redemption rate is what you really are trying to shoot for. And also, if you give out enough of these cards, you will know that even if you get a 1% redemption rate, they're really not going to come overnight. It may take a few days, but for the most part, they're going to take months. And that is why doing these referral strategies, passenger referral strategies, you need to keep at it pretty much. You need to do it, consistently or over a long period of time, because you're going to start seeing these, trickle in over time. Yeah, a good buddy of mine, he's a Lyft driver, and he won the Golden Fist Bump Award maybe about a couple of weeks ago. And he started driving in June or July, so he isn't the most veteran drivers of the ones I still hang out and talk to. He's one of the newer ones, but he is just really killing it on passenger referrals. He's not the most personable looking person though. I'm really hoping he doesn't see this video, or he's really gonna ream me out for that. He's definitely not the most personable looking. He's in his, he's middle age. And there's he does give off a little bit of a creep factor, but I don't know what he does, but he's just really personable on as a street team. He just goes out there with either by himself or groups of other people, and then he'll go and hand out cards. He's handing out cards all over the city, from Harvard Square, which is more of a touristy slash college kind of area, to just college campuses and things like that. And he tries to be personable and tries to be approachable, and that's the kind of approach that he's taken into handing out referral cards. And he says that he obviously has quite a bit of luck, even though he started in June, and Henry started driving for Lyft back in July. So Henry's been driving longer than a buddy of mine, for about a year. And the buddy of mine who just started driving in June, he has about over 1,000 passenger redemptions. So you can kind of figure out how many cards he actually had to give out in order to get those 1,000 redemptions. I mean, it's kind of mind-boggling how many he actually has. I think right now he said he's like the top 10 in the country. I think he's like number 6 or something. I can't really remember. But he's up there in passenger redemptions, and his goal was to knock Henry off of his pedestal. I mean, fortunately, Henry hasn't been doing it for quite a while now. But so that buddy of mine is definitely on his way to catching up. But he's really focused on that, and he definitely has a couple of really intriguing tips about passenger referrals that I really can't get into in this particular video. But it's definitely very eye-opening, interesting how he approaches passenger referrals, and it's not rocket science. He just goes out there, he's really positive, and he hands out cards in an active way. So I'll get into the slight distinction in just a little bit. So back to the two different ways of passenger referrals. So you have, passive ways of handing it out. So you can just, dump them in a bulletin board, dump them in a restaurant. You can talk to them and say, hey, can you give out these cards? They usually leave them out, by the register or something, or the coffee shop is probably a pretty good one as well. People are just standing around waiting for their coffee anyway. So, that's a perfect situation for handing out referral cards. But when you do it passively, the redemption rates aren't nearly as high. Now, you can argue that you could just carpet bomb the crap out of this technique. So you just leave them, all over town, every coffee shop and, every waiting area, every restaurant. And, just due to brute force, you can totally earn, at least $100 a week doing this. All you need is 20 redemptions, and you figure even at a 0.5% redemption rate, you just got to give out. Oh man, I can't do math right now. At 1%, it's about 2,000 cards. So about half, it's 4,000 cards, and that only costs. I know Lyft is selling about 500 cards for about $5 or 1,000 for 10. So you figure you're going to be spending about $20 or $30 in referral cards for $100 worth of income. Even figuring for after taxes and stuff, it's not too shabby. But of course, you can always do better in an active approach. So passively, you're just pretty much leaving cards out, or you're actually doing it in person. You can do it passively and in person by flyering or just forcing people to take cards. I mean, I'm sure you've all been in major cities where you see people, just handing out flyers. They have a giant poster board and they're just handing out flyers. They don't say anything to you, and they're just forcing you to take it. And all they are about is throughput. So they have a giant stack, and they're just going through them, and they're just giving it to anybody who has two fingers that can accept it. So that's a passive way of doing it. But in an active way, what you're trying to do is to get them to want to take the card from you. So that does require a little bit of, speech, or some kind of commentary from you. You really got to start selling it so that they want to take it from you. And generally, if you're street teaming, once you get one, it's easy. It just snowballs from there. Generally, more people want to take it, and so forth and so on. So that's really the two major differences in passenger referrals. And the active way is definitely significantly, has a significantly better redemption rate than a passive one. Now, when you do it actively, though, you do need to be personable, and you do need to be positive and just willing to connect to people. You can't just be standing out there, out in the street, and just yelling at people, trying to say, "Hey, take this card. It's $25 or it's $30 or whatever." You really gotta want to, to connect with them. You really want to, sell them the benefit of the card, or of the referral rather. So, you got to make them want to take it. And like what Harry said, it has to be an immediate benefit. Even if you're giving out, cards that are worth $50 or something, they need to see that immediate benefit. So if if you were to tell me, oh, hey, I'm giving you a $50 referral card, I'm gonna think, well, how the hell am I gonna use $50? Like, am I gonna go from, how far am I going from Boston on this trip? And it's only one trip. Generally, I think there was a period of time when they were giving out two free rides on Lyft up to $25. And that buddy of mine, he said that you know, his ease of giving out cards just went up significantly. It was just so much easier to give out cards like that. Especially with two rides, now you get a round trip. Now with most of the referral cards, it's only one, so you need to team up with a friend to get the other ride back. If you're really looking for that free ride. Um, so, if you do really try to do passenger referrals, and then you want to give them out actively instead of just standing on the street, tossing cards at people and things like that, you also have to monitor your own kind of creep factor as well. You don't, you want to look presentable. You don't want to look like this, kind of have that 5 o'clock shadow. I mean, because I'm Asian, this is probably about 4 days in the making, it's but you want to look presentable. So, but you don't want to, dress kind of weird for whichever situation you're in. So you're never going to see a guy with a full suit, dressed up in the middle of the summer. You're talking about 95 degrees, 100% humidity, and just handing out cards. That looks weird almost anywhere you go. So you really want to try to look, presentable, but then appropriate for whichever situation you're in. So obviously college towns are just the easiest. You can dress in a t-shirt, hopefully have a Lyft logo or an Uber logo. You could probably try to talk to your local office and say, hey, I want to hand out some referral cards. Do you have any kind of free shirt I can get so I can, represent the brand and things like that. And that works quite a bit better. I tried it both ways. Definitely with that Lyft shirt with let's say a balloon or a giant stash or something. Sometimes I bring out my giant pink mustache. I wear it as like a kind of a wing. That generally works quite a bit better. People are just kind of want to check out, just kind of want to touch the giant Lyft mustache sometimes. But just having that generally works a little bit better. People are more likely to come up to you and kind of find out what you're doing. Like, are you handing, like, what are you handing out? Especially with Uber, everyone knows Uber, so they're like, oh, okay, what are they giving out this time? And what's the deal with them? So, dressing appropriately and dressing for the occasion definitely helps a lot. I've done, actively handing out cards all over town, bars, downtown, college places, touristy places, some train stations. Haven't tried the airport yet, but I'll get into that a little bit. But definitely, jeans and t-shirt generally works pretty well. You don't have to be too dressed up, but just make sure you look presentable and just be aware of potentially how you look relative to the audience that you're trying to attract. And then also just how you're presenting yourself. You really want to be positive and open, but you don't want to be aggressive when you hand out your referral cards. You want to be more neutral, but then also active at the same time. I know I'm not really making too much sense there, but I'm hoping you get the gist of what I'm trying to say. So I have I know another driver of mine, or not, another driver who drives in Boston for Lyft. And I don't know how he does this, but he says that he gets at least a couple of, redemptions by giving out cards in his car. So obviously, it usually only works with, two or more passengers. So generally, one is the requester. So obviously, he or she won't be able to use your code. But you could try to go after the friend, to say, oh, hey, have you tried Lyft before or Uber before? Hey, if you haven't, your first ride is $10 off or whatnot. But just be aware that some passengers are kind of smart with this whole passenger referral thing. So just just be cautious, and that they know that the friend can be using her own referral code, and then they both get $10. So don't try to play it off and say you didn't know. Some passengers know this inside and out. So just be ready for that and just say, oh yeah, sorry, you can also use your friends too. And just kind of play it off a little bit. Generally that works just fine. But just don't lie to them and say, hey, you really got to use my code and things like that. But giving it out to just other, just other people in your car definitely work. I think that friend of mine who gives his code out in the car, he says that sometimes he can say, oh, if you have any other friends who don't have it, can you hand out my card? They also get $10 too, and then they use them to help him market his own code. He's seen that work. Um, he actually seen that directly work with some of his passengers because he tracks them by last name. So he gave out a code to some John Doe. And then he noticed something weird about 2 months later. Then he got, another person, Jane Doe. I'm like, okay, that's kind of weird. It was a very unique last name. It wasn't just Doe. But actually, if you actually had a John Doe in your car, you would probably recognize him because I don't think I've ever had a passenger named John Doe before. And then he saw another person. It was like Mary Doe. He was like, oh, that's kind of weird. And I think he saw one additional one with like a similar last name or very similar name within a 2 or 3 day span. So, odd things like that work. So, never, always trying to experiment with different ways to approach your passengers' referral codes. But the one big thing is if you're in the middle of an Uber trip, don't be giving out Lyft cards. There was quite a few Boston drivers that are now blacklisted from driving an Uber because they were so heavily promoting Lyft while they were doing Uber. This was back in the day when they were also giving out $500 too. So like, hey, I can kill two birds with one stone, get my $500, and then also get more passengers on Lyft and hand out my referral code. So, um, so those are kind of things to watch out for when you're handing out cards in your car. Um, And then, okay, so let's get into a little bit more of how to do passenger referrals in an active approach. So a thing that Henry Chen mentions that works really, really well for him is that he goes to lines outside of bars and clubs and just say, hey, who wants a free ride home after the bar? That line generally works pretty well, especially late at night. People are just waiting around. They're not really doing anything anyway. There's no real form of entertainment. They're probably most likely complaining about the long line at this particular club, bar, or lounge. So generally, when he does this, he actually gets a pretty like a good number of people that comes up to him and take his referral card. And I think it works really well only because he only hands out Lyft cards because he's a Lyft driver. I'm not exactly sure how successful you'll be in handing out Uber cards because it seems like everyone has Uber and everyone's at least has tried Uber once. So when you're doing these type of strategies in terms of active or passive approach, however you want to do it, you could try to experiment with the different cards like Uber or Lyft or even Sidecar. The less popular the service is, probably the more likely you may have redemption rates. I think maybe with Sidecar, there may be too few drivers in your city, so for that to really work. But I think Lyft is in a nice particular market share that you can really pull out these passenger referrals. All of the previous stats that I noted were from Lyft drivers, so they were Lyft referral codes. I don't know much about Uber referral codes and redemption rates and things like that. Mine has been fairly bad in terms of Uber. They were probably down in the low, maybe 0.2 or 0.3% redemption rates. I tried a little bit of both. I haven't really done a lot of Uber referral codes. I may want to maybe go back out there and maybe do a direct comparison of which one is better, Uber referral codes or Lyft referral codes. But generally, most of my time has been doing Lyft referral codes just because all the like a lot of people noted, there's a lot more marketing material. There was actually a whole program developed to help drivers give out referral codes. It was called the Ambassador Program. And they had all the street teaming material. They also have tips and tricks on how to do street teaming, how to do, Lyft referrals. And that, to a certain extent, was fairly effective. I could try to see if I can dig up any of that stuff and hopefully publish some of those things. but there are definitely some very far out there tips and tricks that you could definitely use to definitely accelerate your passenger referral redemption rates. But I think this video made me run a little long, so I don't think I'll have time to get into it. So other places you can do active referral, card giving out are, sporting events. So think before a baseball game, basketball, hockey, football, soccer, whatever it is. Always try to do it before. After the game may not work. It definitely doesn't work when the team is losing and losing badly. Because generally what I've noticed is that people tend to trickle out of those games. People, give up either, they have certain time constraints that they're going to give up on their team, either their second quarter, halftime, or third quarter, or whatever it is. But if it's a really close game and everyone stay in the stadium and then they all get all let out at once, that generally works a little bit better. But I haven't really tried after a sporting event, but generally had a much better success before, because you get a steady stream of people coming into the stadium, so they're more spread out, so you have a much more time to engage with potential customers when they're going to the game. Whereas after the game, it's just a mad rush. People just they're bolting for the exit and they're beelining, or they have a straight path to wherever they're going. Either it's the public transit, a taxi, a bar that they want to get drunk at after the game, whatever it is. They're much more focused into getting where they're going. So it's very hard to like stop them. Like, hey, take my $25. It doesn't work nearly as well after the game than it does before. Also, big events in your city like Comic-Con, large conferences, different conferences that may be happening in your city. They happen all the time in your city, and you may not even know it. Generally, sometimes video game conferences. I know a lot of the people in Boston had a lot of luck with PAX East. They had crazy redemptions there. City holiday events. So I mean, this is January now that I'm posting this video, but in December there were tons of holiday events. Tree lighting, Hanukkah lighting, menorah lightings, and then also New Year's Eve. They have fireworks, or the night before events, or whatever it is. You have New York ball drop and things like that. So those are actually pretty good places to hand out cards. Note that even in large cities, there may be multiple tree lightings. I didn't even know this. In Boston, we had 2 trees. There was one in Quincy Market, and then people started talking about another tree lighting. I'm like, where there's another tree? I thought the only one was in Quincy. Well, there was one in the Boston Common. So just there are always events that happen anywhere in your city. So just kind of take a look out for them. Sometimes the Uber or Lyft weekly emails or digests sometimes go over some of those major events. Seems like Uber does a better job at like locating these various events and big sporting games and things like that. But just try to look for certain events, big events that a lot of people get drawn to. I'm a runner. So I would more or less maybe focus on running events like 5Ks, 10Ks, half marathons. A lot of people tend to fly in for marathons, especially half marathons. There are some, but more so marathons. People tend to travel a little bit further for marathons. But so you could try to attack those kind of special events as well. So I already mentioned lines outside of bars and clubs. But make sure that you just walk by and advertise. You don't want to be aggressive in selling these referral cards, especially at a bar or club, because the bouncer, who probably is a lot bigger than you, are always monitoring for people, poaching their customers or harassing their customers. So you got to be cognizant of that. There are, soliciting laws in place to prevent people from just going into a bar and like, hey, do you want to go to this other bar? Even outside of a bar or club or lounge. So be careful of those soliciting laws. So just try to advertise it and then have people come to you. generally, bouncers or whoever are less likely to actually leave if potential patrons of their establishment are trying to get something from you. But they're much more likely if you're just aggressively, pushing cards into their jackets and their hands. They're much more willing to actually leave there. I had moderate success with train stations or bus stations to that effect in terms of referral cards. Generally, just because of the way that they commute in terms of trains or buses, um, they generally have a ride lined up already. So, it doesn't work very well, but depending on what time of day, whether Saturday, Sunday, Friday nights, or a regular work commuting day, you could get better or worse redemption rates. But train stations work fairly well in terms of passenger referrals. There are obviously some soliciting laws there as well. You can't just be trying to market things inside of a train station, so you got to try to stay outside the train stations. In airports, it's generally not a good idea because the airport tends to own all of the land around it. You can't just be standing outside the terminal and start, handing out cards or market, different things. The state troopers are definitely going to take notice and ask you to leave. You just can't do that in the airport. Whereas you're much more likely to be able to do that in a train station or outside the train station rather. I know that a lot of people hand out cards, in busy downtown areas and things like that. And a great line that a lot of people use is hey, do you want a free ride to the airport? That generally works really well. So you could try to, you could try that line for yourself. There's a couple of other drivers here that would agree with that. Hey, you want a free ride to the airport? That line generally works very, very well. So, these major events or, particular areas of your city in terms of giving out cards generally work pretty well, but you can also do them in very busy market type places in your city. It doesn't have to be a train station, bars, clubs, sporting events, stadiums and things like that. You can definitely have some success in, major popular areas like downtown, any kind of market area, very busy bar area in general, any kind of square that is very touristy. Um, but in those types of situations, I find that it is much more beneficial or much more effective that you do it as a group. You just can tend to get lost in the crowd, depending on how large the crowds are. If you're standing there with some kind of Lyft shirt or some kind of giant pink mustache, to get attention, you could do pretty well. But generally, in teams, though, you do tend to do better, and that's why they've always, or Lyft tries to get people out in teams or street teaming, and that's what they kind of more focused on. You definitely generally work better as a team because it looks more professional. It looks more like a concerted effort and not just some guy who just parked down the block. He has 30 minutes and he's going to hand out as many cards as he can in the middle of the street, and he's just going to try to brute force this thing. With street teams, it looks more organized, more professional, and all you guys are much more visible as a group standpoint. So that's why the ambassador program focused quite a bit on street teaming. Like I said before, I'll try to find some material on that. But I haven't done street teaming to a large degree. I've heard from it from other drivers. And I've asked them about the redemption rates, and they're generally decent. They're in the 1% range. It varies so much depending on the time of day or where they are. But they generally do. They say they do better street teaming than on their own in the same location. But you could definitely get really good results doing it on your own, but in very key locations. Obviously, targeting is what you're really going to go after. So just be cognizant of that. So just to wrap up this video, so in these two different ways of passenger referrals, you have your passive on one end, so you're just giving out cards to strangers, whoever, without really talking much, or you're putting them in places where people will find them. Or the other way is active. So you are promoting this particular, referral card, and you're getting people to take it from you. So those are the two major ways of doing passenger referrals. Passively, the upside is that you can do, sky's the limit pretty much in terms of passively doing cards. You can leave them in a million different places. You could print out a million cards and just give them out in a week, and then just let the money roll back in. But like I said before, your redemption rates are going to be at best like a 0.5% redemption rate. And figuring for the cost of the cards, you're not going to be making nearly as much money as you will. So let's say for 20 cards at 0.5%, that is 4,000 cards, and 4,000 cards cost somewhere in the neighborhood of I think like maybe $40. You could obviously cut that down a little bit, let's say $35 or $30. But from those 20 referrals, you got $100, right? And then after taxes, you figure that's only $60. You figure you're taking about 40% off the top. I'm overestimating a little bit, but that's generally how much it is. You're going to earn $60, and now your referral cards are going to cost $30. So it doesn't make that much sense. Now, if you can double or quadruple that redemption rate, get it down to, or get it up to about 1%, it doesn't look nearly as bad. Now you only have 2,000 cards. Your cost is $20, and now you're making about $40, which is not so bad. You can, excuse me. You could definitely do this in your free time, and and you could just go to town with these types of promotions. You could do it on the side and just let the money roll in. So just one last thing to note is that these referral redemptions, they're not going to happen overnight. So of course, when you do an active approach, you will get a large bump right away. Of course, the first couple of days you're going to get a lot of redemptions, and then they're going to taper over time. But if you do this enough, you will have that residual amount that coasts into infinity rather. They will provide a pretty decent boost to your income. It could be $50 or sometimes if it's crazy, it could be $100 for the week. And now that's not so bad. Now you're not doing anything, and now collecting maybe $50 a week. But all these strategies, it does take time to develop, and it also it takes a lot of time to get all those cards out there so that they're in people's hands, and then excuse me. So it does take time to build up. So if you do this correctly, you're definitely going to see a bump in pay in the first week or 2 weeks. If you keep doing this, it'll be week over week over week. But the benefits are long term. I sometimes I still have referrals coming in. I know that for Sidecar, I don't really give out my Sidecar code that much, but I did a while ago when I was just experimenting with a couple different referral type codes, and sometimes I still see referral codes coming in, and I'm just looking at my statement. I'm like, I have no idea where this is coming from. And then I know that I still get redemptions on my old Lyft code from ages ago, but before we had our personal ones. And I'm looking down. I'm like, when did I give that code out? I have no idea. But if you do this long enough, your code will get out there, and you will get these redemptions, and they will come back. So doing nothing at all, you're not going to get anything. But if you do this enough and you keep at it, even if you do it once a month, or maybe even once a week, you could definitely see the benefits of that. And also, if you want to start analyzing the different results of your different referral techniques, make sure to space them out a little bit. So maybe do it every 2 weeks, and then you can see what the initial bump is, and then also what the residuals are. it was hard to tell with my different techniques of how effective it actually was, but I do, my initial, so all of the results that I'm giving out in this YouTube video is my results from that bump. I see a higher bump in certain places, and then smaller bumps in certain areas like train stations and things like that. Um, so yeah, I'm really hoping to try to keep this keep this a little bit shorter. But one last thing I want to note is that your referral redemption rates sometimes depend on the weather. And obviously, it's much more highly correlated if you're doing this in bad weather. So let's say it's freezing cold outside, it's 20 degrees outside. They're much more likely to take a free ride. They find a car in the wild, like, oh man, this would be pretty good right now to take because it's 10 degrees outside, or it's pouring rain, or it's snowing. So if you see weather events coming in the next couple of days, like it's going to be raining, 4 to 6 inches of rain in the next day or so, maybe start giving some cards out the day before. You can get people to start thinking about the weather ahead of time, especially if there's a large tropical storm or something, something that's not severely enough to shut down the city, but enough to just really cause havoc on people's commutes. You can try to do that as well. I tend to have some decent success trying to do it that way as well. So anyways, I'm just going to cut this video short. So hopefully you like this video. And again, this is Rideshare Dashboard, trying to teach or educate drivers on maybe two major different ways of passenger referrals. If you like this video, just click like below this video, and also subscribe to my YouTube channel if you'd love to see more. I'm all about teaching drivers, whether it's Lyft, Sidecar, Uber, different tricks and tips on how to improve their income. So make sure to go to ridesharedashboard.com. The link should be somewhere below this video if you want to check out more stuff on my website. I posted well over 100 posts, and they go over everything from taxes to insurance, to accepting trips and things like that. So make sure to check that out. I think eventually I'll be releasing some of the more secret passenger referral strategies in my online course on udemy.com. You should be able to find that link either below or on my website. So feel free to check those things out. So I'm hoping you like the video, and hopefully I'll see you at the next one.